Hello and welcome to episode 14 of No Time to Cry. We're your hosts. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Laura.
And I do feel like we've said this many a time now, but we are in a different location again.
Yes, we are. We like to mix things up. What can we say?
Yeah, but this is probably likely to be a permanent fixture unless we decide to do something kind of off-site or something like that.
Yeah.
Last episode was a one-off being in my house because obviously I recorded with Paula because Laura couldn't make it that week. We've got her back. She's back in business.
I'm back.
And yeah, so we've set up, we're actually in Laura's now, and previously we were in Laura's husband's shop, but we needed to have access to it on a more regular occurrence, didn't we? Because we're doing these weekly. So it sort of made sense to do it somewhere where, no matter what the day or time is, we can come in and record. So yeah, welcome to our humble abode, is what I would say.
Cozy cellar.
Yeah, we're going to call it cellar sessions.
Mm-hmm.
We're not, but that is what it is. And yeah, so hopefully you guys will get to see us here more often. And I feel like the sofa's just a cooler vibe,
So
just
much
like
comfier, guys.
more comfy. Those chairs are gorgeous, but it was very hard to get out of them.
Yeah, very much so. They were quite rigid. Not great for your back. So
Sorry, Todd, because he actually bought them.
He did, yeah. Thank you. The thought was absolutely there, and they do look gorgeous.
Yeah.
But yeah.
They might make a reoccurrence at some point if we have some guests or something, just to rearrange things a little bit. But in general, we're going to be here and we're going to be comfy. So the episode this week, we wanted to touch on just how much things have changed for us on an individual since grieving, concentrating on some of the things that have been really positive for us. So some of the lessons that we've learned on a personal basis, personality, physical, and then touching on maybe some of the things that have been, negatively impacted us. And I think that can be expanded on a little bit. So yeah, let's start by, on a personal note, Laura, what do you think has been the biggest change for you since losing your mum?
I think there have been a number of different things that have changed about me, but I would say from a positive perspective, if we're starting with that, I would say my perspective has shifted quite significantly.
Yeah.
In the respect of, I used to worry about everything. Like was such a worrier, and I still am to a point now, but I don't get as bogged down or as upset as I used to about things that A, are out of my control, or B, feel maybe less significant, because I often say that if something bad happens now, I just think, and this is an awful thing to say because some people are going to be thinking, Jesus. But if something bad happens to me now, I do think, well, my mum died, so there's literally nothing worse that I feel like I could go through. I still get a lump in my throat when I think about it. It's just it completely broke me, and now I just think, oh, if something negative or something unfortunate is thrown my way, I just think, well, I've survived.
Yeah.
Losing mum. It's been really difficult, and it continues to be every day. But I'm still here, so I always just think from that perspective, you've got through losing one of the most important people in your life. So what,
Yeah.
nothing else really compares.
And it doesn't, right? I think that's something to say, is like it does just change your whole entire outlook on things. And I have seen that become a bit of a negative in some spaces, but I think in general, it opens your eyes to what is really important in life and what you really care about it. And I feel the same. I feel like that's something I've hugely taken away from grief, is just, why worry? You don't know what tomorrow brings. And I think when you've lost people suddenly, in particular, there's more of that, there's no promise of tomorrow.
There isn't, and it's ever more significant in your brain, that, isn't it? Is the fact that people used to say that to me all the time, live each day like it's your last, and you're never guaranteed tomorrow, and you just think, oh, whatever.
Shut up.
But it actually happened to the both of us.
Yeah.
So, and to our parents, of course, they always thought they'd have tomorrow. We had plans.
Yeah.
The day after mum passed away. So it's thinking of life in a completely different kind of mindset, isn't it?
So yeah, for myself, I think I'd probably agree that my biggest change has been my outlook on life. But there's certainly been some more changes for me in terms of relationships and like positive relationships. I One of my dad's brothers, before my dad died, I didn't even have his mobile number, just because like we didn't have that real relationship with my uncle. And now I speak to him so regularly, and like I've, all the time we have phone calls, we catch up, especially after my dad died straight away. We'd sit on the phone for like hours and hours at a time, just like catching up. And I spend a lot of time with my dad's other brother, who moved a lot closer to me, and my auntie Sue, who I know I mentioned on the episode about my dad. So I think the biggest positive I've taken away is, although my dad dying is just, always going to be sad and always going to be something that I've probably hold in my heart forever, I don't think I ever would have gained as close relationships with my uncles without him passing. So it's almost like he left that as a blessing to me, that there was other relationships that I was now going to have.
A parting gift.
Yeah, I think so. And I think he possibly knew that he couldn't be that father figure to me when he was still here. And it's almost like he's left those relationships behind to almost say, I'm sorry I couldn't do it for you, but actually I'm going to leave you two brothers that maybe can. Like, that's how I look at it.
It's
anyway.
a lovely way to think of it like that, I think. And he left you in safekeeping.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that they care about me so much, and they regularly check in on me, and especially with me getting married and stuff like that, when I speak to my uncle Steve, I just think his little face like lights up whenever I talk about it, and same with my auntie Sue. And it's not to say they wouldn't have come, but my uncle Phil, for instance, like I say, I didn't have that relationship with him where it would even be the case that I'd probably think, oh well, does he come, doesn't he come, I've not spoke to him in 10 years, like those sorts of things. Whereas now, like, there's no shadow of a doubt that they were like the first people I was like, they've got to be there, And unfortunately, one of them might not be able to make it because I'm getting married abroad, but they're just a massive, massive part of my life now. And I can, hand on my heart say, my uncle Steve, I would meet up with anyway, every so often, but the relationship that I have with him now is, one where I look to him as that kind of father figure to me. That's who I see him as. I haven't told him that, so Uncle Steve, if you're listening, I'm sure
nice
he knows.
way to find out.
Yeah, I'm sure he knows. But yeah, he's just an angel, and the same with my auntie Sue and my cousins. Like, it just brought us as a family a lot closer together on my dad's side.
It often does, doesn't it? As well, that's kind of one of the positives that you do unfortunately get out of losing someone, is that, like we've said, I guess on previous episodes actually, that any family relationships that you have that are really strong, same with friendships, tend to get a lot stronger, and you tend to get a lot closer because you then have something that bonds you forever, ultimately.
And do you know what's weird? It's like, we now don't often speak about my dad. Do you know? But to begin with, obviously, when you lose someone, that is like the topic. That's what's holding your relationship together. The kind of glue to it is that you've got this. Oh, we said it before, like a trauma bond. Really, you've gone through that difficult time together, but now we're just invested in each other's lives, I suppose. Whereas previously, even when I spent a lot of time, with my uncle Steve when my dad was still here, a lot of it was around my dad. What was my dad doing? How's he been? Have I spoke to him? Have you spoke to him?
Yeah.
God, like, what's happening now?
There's a massive interest in you now. Not that there wasn't before, but it's a level up, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And that's like probably the thing that I hold closest to my heart, is like, it almost sounds really awful to say, but I do believe there is always silver linings in everything if you look hard enough. And that in particular is one thing I take away. And I believe, like you said, Laura, it's a gift from my dad that happened. And yeah, so from that side, and we've spoke a bit about like relationships. The last 2 years, my personal relationship with Jamie has been the best in 10 years, which again sounds ridiculous because it was also the hardest time of my life. But when you see people turn up for you time and time again with no agenda whatsoever, other than the fact that they literally just adore you, want the best for you, and want you to be okay, you can't deny that kind of love. I think that's something that is hard to come by.
It's
And
unconditional, isn't it?
yeah, completely. And I think I listened to something the other day, actually. It was a podcast I was listening to. I think it's a fairly new one. It's like the guy from, if you've ever watched Celebs Go Dating, Paul, I think he does Married at First Sight as well. And he was actually talking to that actually love is conditional, because there is, he did, like, he went into some research that said, this is really sad by the way, that when women become terminally ill, 20% of men leave their partner. But when men become terminally ill, it's only 2% of
Oh my
women that
gosh.
leave. Which is, oh, there or thereabouts, right? I'm
Bloody
kind
hell,
of
Shan.
paraphrasing from what he said, and I'm sure he said it
It's
was in his book.
heartbreaking.
But yeah, so, and when they question people as to why they did leave that relationship, it's because they weren't getting from it what they needed anymore, because obviously that person couldn't, whether that be physical touch, whether that be attention, words of affirmation, whatever that is. So that means that your love is conditional, right? They couldn't hit that condition, so that your love faded away. But I think when, and listen, like, that's really sad. Obviously they could go your whole life without getting a terminal illness or whatever it is.
God forbid if you do that.
I know.
Jesus.
Jesus. I think a lot of our listeners are women, so, tap your husbands up and be like, when they always say, you ask those questions like, would you still love me if I was a worm?
Yeah.
Would you still love me if I was this big? But yeah, so I think, that's like obviously the other side of it, but the side that I've seen from James is just, I don't think there was any more that he could have done for me. If anything, I think he went above and beyond, and it just gave me a complete different view of my relationship. And we're obviously both still fairly young, but I think when you are so young and you see somebody turn up for you like that, no questions asked. I didn't have to ask him to do anything. It was like he just knew what to do.
And he wanted to.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's a big
if
difference.
They want
isn't
to,
it?
they will, right? That's the whole piece. And the positive that I've taken from that is just an appreciation for him that, again, unfortunately, I don't think I ever would have had if I didn't go through what I went through. And that's not to say that I didn't love him, God, to the ends of the earth and back before, but it's just a different level of appreciation that you don't see. Like, I didn't need to see that from him. There was nothing going on in my life where I needed that level of support, that level of love, that level of, no matter what, I'm going to be here for you. So to see that from your partner so young, I'm only 28. We've been together since I was 18, but like, it puts your world into a different perspective, and it makes me feel safe, it makes me feel secure. I think it's made me more confident in myself, because I know that I've got somebody behind me that will have my back no matter what. And again, it's not that I didn't think that's what he was doing for me anyway, but he didn't have to prove it. It was just an assumption that I had based on his personality.
When push came to shove, as my mum used to say,
yeah, he turned up.
That's because a lot of people can say that they'll be there and they always have the best intentions. I'd like to think, always, most of the time, of course, people do. But when you're in the reality and you're faced with very difficult, challenging, and trying times, some people just aren't able to.
No, and we're grateful for both of our partners during that time, but I think it's like the way that I view it is like our relationship just pivoted. It went to a complete different place that we'd never kind of been in before, and we've almost like followed on that trajectory. It's like our communication, everything just excelled to a different universe. And I think it's because we had to talk about our emotions. We had to go to that other level. And I haven't always been the best at communicating myself. I think we've both spoke to that we're probably naturally quite people pleaser esque energy. So, for the probably the first like 7 years of our relationship, I wouldn't have said that I had anything, outside of to necessarily expand on hugely, but I certainly wouldn't have necessarily expressed how I was feeling in a in
It's
the
a
best
maturity
way.
thing as well, though, probably, I think,
And
isn't it?
therapy, I think, to be
Yeah.
honest, I think therapy massively helped me do that and understand myself a lot, because I don't think it was always a place of me not feeling like I could speak. It was not knowing how to explain how I was feeling.
Yeah. Not knowing how to sort of articulate it in a way that will sort of be best received. Because I think a lot of the time in your relationship, if you've got to talk about a difficult situation, you're conscious about how you word it so that you don't upset the other person as well,
Yeah.
aren't you? And it's just figuring out over time what that needs to look like, and
Yeah.
how you need to word things so that it is taken in the right way and acted upon, I guess. So
And it takes time. Like I said, we've been together 10 years, and I'm saying to you, like, maybe in the last 3 or 4, we finally hit that spot where we feel like we're communicating really well. And that's not to say that we didn't have good communication previously. It's just it's never been this good. It's never
yeah.
been at this point. And listen, there might be phases in the future where that dips a little bit and it goes back up, but it's certainly been a positive that I've taken away from this experience, and saying, I don't know if we would have shared, like, emotionally as much as we have now, had that not have
I
happened with my
agree. I
dad.
don't think you would have. Well, you might have done it based on a different event that happened in life, but I think it enabled you to sort of pivot, didn't it? And then everything beyond that has just massively changed, but in a very positive way. And sometimes the opposite happens, doesn't it?
Oh, listen, I
So
think that's, well, a given, right? We just spoke about it then. I'm sure there's people that have been left because they're grieving
yeah,
so
yeah,
much. Like,
yeah,
I'm sure relationships have come to an end because I spoke about it last week with Paula, where during certain, I mean, I've definitely changed as a person anyway. In general, we've both said that, but during that deep grief to begin with, I was unrecognizable, and I know
yeah.
you were the same. So when somebody is having to deal with this person in front of them that is completely different to what they know and love, I can imagine for some people, if you really struggle to deal with emotion, sadness, maybe you yourself might suffer with depression, and your partner's always been the one that's pulled you through, and now they're on the floor and you're thinking, I've not got the energy to pick us both up. You
Mm.
can see how it can cause relationships to come to an end. So I think with all of these things that I've spoke to that have been positives for me, it's quite easy to see how they could be the opposite. And on the conflicts episode, we spoke to that a little bit in terms of friendships, family,
Yeah.
how it can cause some distance. So, there's nothing to say that had the scenario been different, or had I have dealt with my grief differently, my relationships with my uncles might not have gone strong. They might have, gone the other way, and our relationship between Jamie and I could have done the same. So,
It's a very personal thing, isn't it?
yeah.
And I think depends on how you choose to sort of handle it and how other people receive that and how they respond to it. And I think from my perspective as well, some of the other things that I've found positive as a result of losing mum are that I do live life differently now. I think a lot of people would say that. I'm sure you would as well, Shannon, that if ever in the past I was worried about booking a trip or thinking about going on holiday or doing something with my girls, I'm with my husband and my family and friends, of course, as well. You just think, just book it, just do it.
I did that the year that Dad died. We booked a holiday of a lifetime to Kenya. Then we agreed to go away with two friends the year after and just book that. They literally sent me a message,
Mm.
and then the next day we booked it. I hadn't even looked at the hotel properly
Yeah, yeah, I remember.
because
Yeah,
I was just like, fuck it. Like, I don't know what life is going to look like for me. I don't know how
it
I'm going to
makes you more
feel.
spontaneous, even if you weren't before, or if you were before. I think
Yeah.
you end up just taking it to another level. And my brother's been the exact same.
Yeah.
Every time he's been able to book a trip, he's done it.
I just think, and do you know what? Part of me thinks I'm not sure me and Jamie even would have moved
Yeah,
without
potentially. Yeah,
that, because I think it does make you a bit of a risk taker.
yeah,
And again, I think that comes from possibly when when you've watched someone kind of live their last few days badly, or they've passed suddenly, you sort of think, I don't want that to be my life, where I'm sat there and I'm thinking, I wish I had done this, this, and this. It's almost like you want to live your life with no regrets and no if, buts, or maybes.
You can't wait for a time that might never happen. Time and the future isn't guaranteed, and that's a really sad and potentially a little bit of a morbid way of looking at it. But I know for a fact my mum had tons of ideas about what she wanted to do with her partner and how she wanted to spend her time with her kids and her grandkids, and she worked so hard all of her life. And I think she was in the position of thinking, oh, I'm just about to enjoy my life.
Yeah.
You know, my kids are growing up, my kids are happy, they're healthy, they're sorted. She'd just done a load of work on her house. And actually, it's really sad in that the house that she designed
Oh,
and built
don't.
with her partner was only finished for 6 months before she died. And it's just, and that's the other thing I just believe in my heart of hearts, that don't wait.
Yeah.
Certainly don't wait for retirement, especially nowadays, because blooming heck, you'll be waiting forever.
But I'll be on my deathbed by the time I retire.
Just do those things now. Just tick off those bucket list items. Go and do those wonderful trips and adventures you want to go on that you think, well, I'll just wait a little bit longer to save money for that, because do you know what? You can make more money, but you can't make more time.
Yeah, I love that.
So,
Money comes and goes. I think that's, when we booked that trip to Kenya.
and within reason, guys. We're not asking you to like make yourselves
Don't get yourself
bankrupt.
into debt. Like we
totally get that.
We didn't get ourselves into debt for it. We just used the savings that have been sat there, for a rainy day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for if the boiler breaks.
Yeah, and then and the boiler did break, by the way, the same year.
Yeah, it did.
But yeah, it's, I think we just said, what is that money sat there for? What's it there for? If we're not going to enjoy it, why are we working so hard? And that's certainly, it changed my perspective at work as well. I've always been like super, super career driven, and I still am. But at the time, I think I mentioned it on the conflicts episode, I did end up leaving the job that I was in because I hadn't been too happy before my dad passed away anyway. And then I remember just going back to work and thinking, I'm going to be fucking sad anyway. I'm certainly not going to do it sat somewhere where it's going to make it worse. Like, I'm going to grieve whether I'm sat in this company, another company, at home, whatever. So what can I control of my surroundings? I can choose if I want to work for this company or not. Guess what? I don't. So I'm going to leave, because that is only going to make me feel worse. Being somewhere where I'm not happy, having to turn up, doing it begrudgingly when I already feel like I don't want to be there because I'm grieving so much, was just not on the cards for me. So I just took control of what I could, and I couldn't control my grief. I couldn't control how I was going to feel to some degree, but I could control where I was going to sit and do it, and it certainly wasn't there. So yeah, like we booked the trip to Kenya, I changed jobs. There was a lot of change in that first year that my dad passed away, and I think it just gave it almost like lit a fire under my bum.
Yeah.
Where it was just like, review your life. What are you happy with? What are you not happy with? And make changes, because like you said, Law, like you can't get this time back. You cannot get this time back. And if you look back in 5 years and go, I sat in that job for another 3 years knowing that I wasn't happy because I didn't want to leave when I was grieving, I didn't want to leave when I was going through a hard time, I think I would have regretted that more than pushing myself through it and going, no, leave, go and start something afresh, go somewhere new, go somewhere that nobody knows that your dad's just died, or how, or what that looks like. Because again, I think that can be a little bit of a burden on you sometimes, because the people around you see you differently, they hear you differently. I'm very different at work to what I am at home. We've spoke about that before, and I had to be quite vulnerable in front of a group of people that never would have seen me in that way. And I don't regret that, because I've got friendships of a lifetime from that company.
It's daunting, isn't it? It's a scary thing to do.
But certainly, if you're wanting, like I felt to myself at that time, I didn't want anybody to feel sorry for me. Obviously, they did. My dad had just died.
Yeah.
But I quite like that, and I think you're similar. I don't want sympathy. I don't want you
It
to.
makes you feel awkward and uncomfortable, doesn't it? It's
Yeah.
sort of it's when people say, and again we've said this before, I think, when you find out somebody's passed away, obviously the natural innate response that you think in your brain to
I'm
say
so sorry for your
is I'm
loss.
sorry, and then the person that's receiving it's like what do you thanks, like what, or
And
it's
do you know,
so
I've stopped
difficult to know how
saying
to
that.
respond to it. I just don't, I never know how to
No.
respond. I'm like, oh, because you don't want to say, and I know you often naturally do, because again, you feel a bit uncomfortable. But I've caught myself before saying, oh, it's all right. Well, it's absolutely not all
No.
right.
Or it will get better.
But you just say it, don't you? It's just like, it's even like similar but different when people see you with like, because I've got two little ones, as you know, now from, well, hopefully from the episodes that you listened to so far.
If this is your first one, it's going to be really weird.
I've got a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old, and if ever I'm out about with them, you always get people that say, "Oh gosh, you must have your hands full. You've got your hands full, haven't you, love?" And I know people mean well again when they say it, but I just sort of think, "Oh gosh,
shut up and grab this child off of me now." Yeah,
yeah,
it's those finding those right words. But I spoke to somebody today who's actually just lost their dad suddenly. It's actually a client of mine, and again, you just choose your words so differently. It
oh
changes your
yeah,
perspective on things. Like I found myself going down more the direction of, make sure you're looking after yourself, make sure you're taking the time that you need, don't let anything,
don't rush back into anything.
don't rush back into work if you don't feel like it. I'm here to talk if you ever want to. Obviously said to her I was in a similar situation 2 years ago, so if you ever want to talk outside of work, feel free to do that. But yeah, the words never I'm sorry, because what does my sorry feel do for her? Nothing. Her dad's just
No,
died suddenly. But I will say, I'm sending you lots of love. Look after yourself, be kind to yourself.
like we said before as well, even just a message to say, look, I'm thinking of you, and you're in my thoughts today. That goes a long way, because people understand that, as Shannon and Paula touched on in the previous episode, it's okay if you don't have the right words or if you don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Just sending a message to say that you're still thinking about somebody carries so much weight. And eventually, when that person feels able to respond to it, they will say that they appreciate it. And I definitely did, and I know you did, Shan, because we know that you don't have the words. And the truth is, nobody has the words to make.
We don't know the words.
We don't know the words at all. But also, no words make it better. That's the truth. So, don't overthink these sorts of things. And I think that way, that's when you see more positive outcomes. I think I found the same now, Shan, that people will reach out to me and say, "Oh, Laura, I just wanted to see how you managed this after losing your mum, because I'm going through a similar thing." And obviously in the past I would never have been able to speak to that.
No.
And now not everything's going to work the same for some people, but I definitely know certain things that are probably going to be more likely to help than others. So
Yeah, you can kind of see what's generic and what's personal. Like, and I think that helps where we speak to each other as well, and discuss what our differences are amongst us, because you can kind of then tell, well, is this personal to me? Is this a personal experience? Is this like individual, or is this probably across the board? And listen, I think we've mentioned it before. If you have text someone and said, "I'm so sorry for your loss," don't feel bad about that. It's
No,
like a
of course not.
conventional like term that's been used my whole entire life. That's how, you see cards that, in sympathy or whatever.
Yeah.
It's more just, and I've never for everybody that messaged me saying I'm sorry for your loss, I couldn't even tell you who did or didn't say it, if I'm honest, because it's not something that you hold on to or begrudge. But I think it's more of from a personal perspective, there's better words now. Like, I know that there's better things that I can say because I've experienced it. So yeah, I don't think there's any, unless you've been really rude to someone, I don't think there's anything that you
Don't do that, guys.
yeah,
Please.
I don't think there's anything you can do wrong, like Paula said, and that's what she had taken away. And do you know what? It was really interesting, because Paula and I had a conversation after we'd finished recording, and she said, it's really funny because although you've obviously said to me over time, like, oh, thanks for being there for me, and this, that, and the other, we'd never gone into the great detail of like what she did for me and how she did it and how that made me feel. So she just came away from the conversation almost just so grateful that like she'd done a good
It
job.
validated everything that she'd done, yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
and that again just talks to you. I've said it on previous episodes, Laura, and I think feel like we're quite good communicators, but even still, even though I feel like I've shown appreciation and things like that, to hear it in a different perspective, it just changed her outlook as well and made her feel more confident
Yeah,
with
it goes a
how
really
she
long way,
approaches
that, doesn't
things.
it? Because I think in your head you can think, oh no, it was really well received when I did X or Y and Z, but to actually hear that out loud, I suppose, is quite
Mm.
reaffirming, and just made you both probably realise, actually,
Yeah,
when you were chatting about it,
d-
how it
definitely.
helps. So
Yeah, definitely. And that, coming back to the point of, we said what's being the biggest like differences, our friendships have changed massively,
yeah,
not just who with who, but how we kind of function with them, how we treat each other. We always treated each other extremely well anyway. We've spoke to that in the last two episodes, and just making sure that we're always there for each other. But it is a different level on like I think there's, all of us have always been quite self-protective, I think, so we tend to talk more after the fact, not when we're going through as much of a hard time. Or
yeah,
whereas I do feel like more so now we're enabling each other to be there in the moment. And if we're going through something now and it's hard, we're giving each other access to that, which we never would have done before.
yeah, I agree with that. And I think because we've both been through such huge losses, but we've been also through a time period now where we've had to be able to manage and cope. We know we've seen sort of the other side to a degree. Like it's never easier. I still stand by that. I don't agree with the fact that grief for me personally gets easier, because
No.
I think it's still always there. But like we've said, you're able to just manage it and carry it day to day. And actually, the good news is, and hopefully this is a positive from this episode, there are things about it that change you for the better, because you kind of have to. Otherwise, you do sort of go the opposite way, don't you? And I've certainly thought about things now that my mum used to say to me, and now that she's, of course, not here physically with me, I'm a bit more conscious of trying to live out some of the things that she used to say. And as I've said before, she really didn't care what anybody thought about her. She was really kind. She did everything that she could to try and do the right thing.
Yeah.
And she always used to say to me, try not to worry about things that you can't control, which is very easy to, it's easier said than done, isn't it? But I'm a lot more proactive in terms of how I think about that now. Whereas before, I would get anxious about everything. I'd overanalyze everything before
Yeah.
I did anything. And now I just think, you know what, Law, if it feels right in your heart of hearts, just do it, just say it. Whereas I used to wait weeks to do things sometimes. I'd procrastinate, I suppose is
Yeah.
the correct word. Whereas now I think I'm a bit more intentional with what I do
Yeah.
and how I do things.
I agree, and I think both of us were massive, massive overthinkers.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm an overthinker anymore.
No, I think you go into a bit of fight or flight mode, don't you? And I think after you've lost somebody, that's kind of the way that you go all of a sudden. Things that you used to have to think so much more about, you sort of like,
I just don't give it the time, I think. I
no.
don't. I would say that both of us probably give things the time that they are owed now, rather than too much time to.
Yeah,
And
overdoing it.
listen, sometimes you flip back, right? And it's like you can get kind of pulled into things, and you're like, oh, this, that, and the other, and then but it only takes a couple of weeks, and you go, what am I doing? Why am I worried about this?
Yeah.
What? Why am I letting this overtake my whole entire life? What's going to happen? And my therapist is great at this, of just saying, like, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
If all of that happened, what would happen? Yeah, well, probably nothing, to be honest. Okay,
There's your answer.
there's your answer. So
Yeah.
I've got a lot better at that, where I kind of sit there and go, what is the worst outcome? And then how would I handle that? To be
Yeah.
honest, I
That's
deal
it.
really well in stressful situations. So the worst thing for me is sometimes I create my own stress, because I
Yeah.
know
You
I
put
deal
yourself under
well.
pressure.
I put a lot of pressure because I know that I can handle pressure well. And when there's no pressure, that's when I kind of stress out a little bit, right? Because I'm like, oh, something bad's going to happen because it's too good. There's not enough stress going on. And that's
Mm.
a personal thing where I've grown up always in that So there's always been something going on, whether that be with my dad or, different scenarios. So, now my dad has passed and there isn't that consistent worry about what's he doing, where is he okay? There has been times where I've felt more anxious because life's good.
Yeah,
There's no
yeah.
stress,
You just
which,
sort of waiting for, is something going to
yeah, which
change that?
sounds backwards, right? That sounds like everybody's epitome of like heaven, like, oh my God, this is just a stress free life. But for me, because I've grown up my whole life with something intense consistently running in the background, always keeping me on my toes, my stressful times now is when things are peaceful, when they're quiet, and I'm almost anticipating what's going to happen next. Something's going to go wrong, and I've got to
Yeah.
be ready for it. And I'm trying to find peace in the peace.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. And you do become a different person, like we say, just mentally, physically, and physiologically. There's loads of evidence to say like how you change as a
Yeah.
person after you've been through grief. But I think it's important to take away that it isn't all bad, because especially for anybody who's going through grief right now in the very early days, like you just think you're going to be a broken person forever.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and there will always be that hurt, and you will always feel like there's a bit of a hole in your heart, almost like something's missing, because there is.
Mm.
But equally on the flip side, you do navigate and approach things differently, and I think that tends to be in a more positive perspective for most people that I've spoken to. And just the way you handle things, even just little things, like I'd like to think I've always been a compassionate person, but I definitely have taken that to another level as well. And I don't have road rage particularly, but even just that's just an example just of daft scenarios where, I don't know, maybe somebody's driving too slowly or too quickly in your head, or whatever that might look like, within reason, obviously
Yeah, I
legally.
did have a go at someone on my way here for
um
driving up my arse when there was a car in front of
yeah,
me. And
that's
I was like, where do you think I'm going to go?
it's not cool.
No, but I know what you mean.
But sometimes I think in my head, obviously that person's not thinking of you.
Previously, I might have, like, don't get me wrong, I did say to him, where do you think I'm going to go? But actually, I am more likely now just to move out of the way and go, whatever.
Whatever, yeah. Does it really
Whatever.
matter? Just let that otherwise you go the other side. And I've seen
Yeah.
other family members of myself who get like more angry than they used to. And you have to sort of consciously train yourself
That's
into
a stage
thinking,
of
is it
grief,
worth
though,
it?
as well, isn't it?
Of
Like,
course it is,
anger
yeah.
is a stage of grief. Yeah, someone I know, Jamie and I were speaking to their partner the other day, and they'd recently lost someone, and she was saying, he's angry all the time.
It's
He's
normal.
got a
It's very. I
really bad
actually,
temper.
I maybe I won't say this for definite, because obviously I don't want to speak on facts, but I think it's more common in men, in my experience. I mean,
I agree.
I would say I felt a little bit of rage, and we've spoken about this before, but also on postpartum. So like, there's an argument to say what
Who knows
element of
what
that
it
is,
is?
having 2 kids in 2 years. But I'm sure you won't mind me saying, but my brother, especially in the early days, was in a really, really bad place from that perspective. He was so angry at the world. He was so angry that mum was taken and other people weren't. And again, that probably sounds a bit sinister, but you see criminals, you see, awful people in the world that continue to live on, and then the most precious, important person to you, your mum, disappears one day. And I think that really, really affected him, and even just daily tasks and just going about his day to day life affected him, because that would really, really bother him.
Yeah.
And obviously, he's 2 years down the line now after losing mum, and it's still really hard for him, of course. But he channels it in a different way, and I think it does take a little bit of time to get that out of your system, because it is a natural stage of grief, like you say, Shan. And equally, your emotions are just everywhere, and you don't necessarily know how to express them in the right way. And unfortunately, sometimes that can come out
Yeah.
in a negative or a nasty way. So
Yeah. And, I think some of the other things that have been positive for me is, like, I've taken my personal health a lot more seriously, like my physical health. I know it's been a bit different for you, Log, because obviously you've had 2 kids, and you've had 2 C-sections as well, which makes things even harder. But you know, when I mean, I did always enjoy like fitness. I was never that kid at school that loved PE. I was always like, can I get a note? Um, but as I got older, I've always dipped in and out of the gym. Like I do pole fitness, so that was something that I got into a little bit more. But again, not like full on. I'd kind of dipped in and out of it. Um, and when my dad passed away, I did nothing for 6 months, like absolutely nothing. Initially, I think a lot of people lose weight
I'm glad
when you
I
lose
didn't.
someone. But no, but the first like few weeks, you know, when you just don't eat, like for
Oh yeah, gosh, yeah.
the first few weeks, like eating is
You
like
have no appetite
no
initially.
appetite.
No.
And also I think it makes you feel sick. It did me anyway. It was just like, it was also back of my mind. It wasn't something like dedicating time to think about what to eat. It just felt like just so far beyond what it was. So initially I lost a fair bit of weight, and I remember, this is just, I've got a really dark sense of humor. When I first came back to work, someone said to me, "Oh God, you've lost loads of weight," and I was like, "Yep, your dad dying will do that to you." Like obviously highly inappropriate. I
Just
shouldn't have
drops
said
that.
that. But you know, that's just me.
I do that though. I think again that's a response to losing somebody. Like I trauma dump all the time, and I'm
Yeah.
so sorry to anyone I do it to, because I know I do it, and people just stand there and they're like,
What do I say?
"Holy shit!" Like I did it today, you know.
Did you?
Yeah. So my poor friend Zoe, I bet she was like, "Jesus, Laura." I've been going through a bit of a rough time with work recently, and you know, she said to me, "Laura, like, I'm so sorry, like everything's gonna be all right. You know, I'm here for you." And I went, "Do you know what, Zoe? It's fine because my mum's died, so." You know, nothing could be any worse than that. And she was looking at me like we were in a public place with other people around us, and I thought, Jesus, Laura, those words just come out of your mouth. But I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a coping mechanism.
Maybe,
But I think people are looking around at me thinking,
okay, now
sure.
it's fine. My mum's dead.
That's basically what I said. I was like, well, the worst thing that could have happened in my life has already happened. So
I'm all good.
screw everything else. So yeah.
But yeah, so I lost a load of weight, and then because I started eating again.
Yeah.
But then I didn't go to the gym because I just couldn't face it. I've mentioned this before. I was really worried that if I went back to doing something that I enjoyed and it didn't bring me that same joy, I would just completely fall out of love with it.
with it, yeah.
So I had to wait till I was ready, and then I weighed myself one day and thought, "Fucking hell, you better get."
I've done that recently.
You better get yourself.
Taking me a bit longer to get to that point.
You know, when you think that you probably you think, "Oh God, I think I've put about 6 pound on. Like I've definitely put," and then you get on the scale and it's like 10, and you've been fucking.
Yeah.
God, that's a bit more than I thought. So I just literally messaged a PT that I'd worked with before and was like, "Listen, I'm not bothered about what I weigh. I'm not bothered about anything like that. I just want to get my mental health in a better space." And I think I've always found that exercising for me has been like a piece in my brain. Like my brain goes silent for the first time in like
it's an escapism
years.
as well, isn't it? It's an outlet.
Yeah. And I've spoke to it before. Like I've got one of those brains that are like Pingu, if anyone wanted the reference.
But just Shannon okay. No, she's not.
No, it's because Laura's given me a Coke and I'm not
She
good
doesn't
with
yeah.
sugar or
I've got caffeine-free ones there.
Sugar or caffeine, and I'm like, woof. But yeah, so I just, the gym is my quiet space. My head stops. I don't think about anything other than whatever I'm listening to or just what I'm doing. And I just needed to get back into the swing of it. And working with Sophie, my PT, she didn't, it was really good because she didn't concentrate on what I was weighing or anything like that. I'd only weigh myself like once or twice a month, just because that wasn't what we were doing it for. Yes, I wanted to lose some of the weight that I'd put on from, not exercising during after my dad died. But actually what was more important to me was just getting to a place where I felt physically better and mentally, and it did. And I would send her like check-in pictures all the time, and she would say to me, like, forget about your body, your face and your emotions, you look so much better, like you look happier, you look more yourself, because she knew me previously as well. And that was like just a massive thing for me. And then I went back to pole, and I've like at least 2 days a week I do that. At least 3 days a week I go to the gym. So I'm like training like 5 out of 7 days a week, and that is my solace now. Other than this, that's my place where I just go, okay, I've got this, and I feel better in myself. I feel physically fitter. It's the best shape I've been in my whole entire life. Just everything about it has like brought me so much comfort. And again, I don't think it would have pushed me had my dad not died. I don't think I would have taken it that seriously. And it's
No.
changed my life like endlessly positives. I feel better. I felt healthier. I can do more things. Listen, I was never big anyway. I was not like overweight or anything. It was just the biggest that I personally had been like after my dad had died. And you can feel it, you like you a few more deep breaths when you're walking up the stairs and those kind of things.
Yeah, you just feel uncomfortable, don't you?
Yeah, and I think you have to do it in your own time. Like, again, I spoke to my sister-in-law who, again, massively into fitness after her dad died recently, took a massive step back, didn't stop, but a massive step back, again, put a little bit of weight on, not noticeable to anybody else. And now she's like, right, I want to get back now. I'm
Yeah.
ready. And I said to her, I told you, you just got to wait until your brain's there.
Yeah.
You can't do it before your brain is ready to commit, because you'll just fall out. You'll dip into it and you'll dip straight back out, because you'll think, this is so like, I'm just not asked.
And it does take a while. I mean, I'm only at the point now where I've like started
But like
to
I said,
realise
I think
like,
that's really hard as well, because you had like 2 very intense pregnancies where you
Yeah.
couldn't train even when you were pregnant.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, especially when you have an emergency cesarean, you kind of your body changes quite drastically for a little while. So I think I was a bit conscious of that, and I wasn't signed off by the hospital for like 10 months after I had my first daughter.
And then you got pregnant again.
And then I was pregnant again. Yeah.
And you were pregnant again.
like,
And it was a high risk pregnancy, and you again wasn't allowed to exercise.
Exactly. But no, it's funny because you say that, Shan, because I've only done like literally a session, 2 sessions now actually, and with 2 mum and baby groups, which I think is amazing that that's available to mums nowadays. Because I'll be honest,
my PT's just started doing one as well, because she's had a baby.
I couldn't do it otherwise. And I know people say, "Oh, you find the time?" No, like, say I can't. If you were to look at my life right now, and to pinpoint when I could go to the gym, you wouldn't be able to find an hour when I could do it, mainly because of childcare, really.
Yeah. Which is, again, another reason as to why we've ended up doing this in your house, because it just takes some of that pressure off.
Yeah, exactly. And this is another one of the daft things that I think, my mum would have had my girls 2 days a week. She always said she would have had Sienna 2 days a week before she was born, and when she was born, of course, and then, sadly, she's never been able to meet Els. But I realised the other day, I was like, do you know what? Just go to a couple of classes and see how you feel. You can take your baby with you, which is obviously ace, because, like I say, I wouldn't be able to go otherwise. And the mums were just so lovely, and the trainer was just so compassionate about the fact that she knew I had a little one, and I was nervous about the fact of, might she cry, because it's not ideal timing with her naps right now. Everybody that's got small kids knows what that's like, because it's just hell for leather later on if they don't nap. And she was so lovely. Eleni was great, but cried a little bit towards the end, and she distracted her to make sure that I could finish off my workout. And afterwards, I thought, oh, I'm a bit sore. It's been a long time. But I felt like so much better for going, and I've said I'm going to do that at least twice a week.
You have to commit to yourself.
So, yeah.
Because I think that's something that you kind of give up a little bit in those early days of grief as well.
Yeah.
It's like you stop caring for yourself a little bit.
You do. You eat rubbish, or you don't eat at all. You stop, like, there's days, that sounds like pretty minging, but, you don't even want to have a shower or anything.
I didn't shower a lot.
I didn't wash my hair, didn't do,
It's awful, because I'm someone who showers like once or twice a day, but like those first like few weeks of like my dad, like even just getting into the shower, I was just walking around like a zombie.
Just too much. Yeah. And I think now,
and I thought, I'm not going anywhere.
Literally. But like you say, you get to a point now where you do want to look after yourself more. Unfortunately for me, I definitely think I need to be a little bit more careful with what I eat, because my mum, of course, had cardiac issues, and
that's a really good point.
Unfortunately, there are foods that contribute to that, and there are some of the obvious things that I've never done and never will do. Like, I've never smoked or anything like that. I do like a drink, but I'm not a big drinker. I drink very rarely.
No.
And apparently the thing that I like the most is quite good for your heart, which is red wine. So thanks, Mum. Apparently a glass, not a bottle, but
Yeah.
I'm an all or nothing kind of girl when I have wine. I'll be honest, if I do have a wine, I'll probably have half a bottle at least. But yeah, it's things like that. I think you do become a little bit more conscious of, and I do think that now I always have in the back of my
Yeah.
mind. You've got two little girls, and people
Specifically with
say,
heart stuff, I think you've got to be really, really careful because sometimes you can look super healthy. Like you think of your mum, like
yeah,
she was dead fit, and
she
like
was ripped,
yeah, she was
literally
really, really small. But
abs.
she did smoke, she did like a
Mm.
drink,
She didn't eat the best food. She ate a
foods.
lot of processed and
Yeah.
rubbish foods.
So, but sometimes you can look the picture of health and not be. I
Yeah,
think that's super important, and that's something that
definitely.
you're gonna have to, like you said, consider now and think
Bit
about for
more
the
conscious of your
kids.
choices, because
Yeah,
people say, don't they? There's that age old saying of, you know, you say you die for your kids, but would you live for your kids? And
yeah,
I always think that now.
yeah,
I'm like, oh, just be a bit more conscious. Do you really need that Mackies today, Laura? I won't lie, guys. A lot of the time, if I'm thinking in my head I need it, I'll probably get it.
yeah. I do, I
But do you know
do.
what? Today you do, but you're not having this, and this.
Yeah,
And I think it's just everything in moderation, as they say. But
yeah.
I'm more conscious of that sort of stuff now.
And I do agree with that. Like my PT's great. Like she, shout out, so fit. Um, she's really good at like not letting, like having that balance between being realistic about what your life is actually like and what
Mm.
commitments you can make to the gym, because I've worked with other PTs that literally want you to train 2 times a day,
Eat
eat
5 times a
eat
day.
5 times a day, things that you're not going to enjoy, things that you're never going to want to commit to, that they know full well that you're going to go, oh, tap out, this is too much, and then they go, well, it's because you're not committed enough, and it's like, well,
I
no,
hate
it's
that
because
response. Yeah.
you're literally trying to ruin my life. Do you remember I trained with that guy, and in 5 days I was like, I can't do this, I literally can't do this. And I remember speaking to you, I've lost 5 pounds in a week, and I've never been so unhappy in my life. Like, it obviously that was before my dad died. But it was just that
Yeah.
commitment of like, I'm vegan, so he wanted me to eat 6 Linda McCartney sausages every single day, two at breakfast time. No, sorry, two at lunch, 3 at lunchtime, 3 at dinner time. And I was like, I'm gonna turn into a Linda McCartney sausage, and I like them, but it was making me
It's a
hate
bit
them.
intense, yeah.
Yeah, and it was like I can't just. And again, it's processed, right? So it's not even like clean food. It was just crazy, and I didn't have 5 pound to lose a week. Like I would have hit my goal weight within like 2 weeks. So I didn't have 5 pound to lose. So I was a bit like, I feel like this isn't the right plan for me. But what Soph was really good at is just, if I've got a holiday or a party or whatever, she just like, enjoy yourself. It's one day. Just don't let it be a week of enjoying yourself,
Yeah.
like going over the board. And she'll always fit into like my meal plans and stuff. She'll always give me a bunch of calories where she says, just eat what you want.
Exactly.
With
And
those calories, have what you want.
that's the sentiment you've got to have in life in general. Like we said, as I suppose it goes hand in hand in some respects of, once you've been through loss, once you're trying to dedicate and commit time to something that's really important to you, like still make sure you're sort of doing it within reasons and you're not pushing yourself like beyond your means or putting yourself into a bit
Yeah,
of a bad
take your time
place.
as well. Like we said, like it took Laura a couple of years to get to that headspace with all the other things that have gone in her life. For me, it took 6 or 7 months to get into that headspace. But again, I was already slightly in it before.
Yeah.
If I hadn't been into fitness at all, it might have taken me years to get to a point where I felt ready. Whereas because I dipped my toe in, and just before my dad passed away, I was like regularly kind of training, at least doing pole fitness anyway. It kind of got me back into, I enjoyed that, why aren't I doing it? And it's just giving yourself time and making commitment to look after yourself, love yourself, do things that bring you joy, because I think it's really easy to wallow in sadness, and that sadness is going to be there, guys. Like there is no doubt about that there will be an essence of sadness with you for the rest of your life. But you can either try and do the things that bring you joy, make you feel good, which is how your loved ones would want you to be, or you can kind of let it overtake you and let it absorb you. And there will definitely be periods of time where you can't fight that and it does absorb you and it
Yeah.
becomes, but don't let that become your life, because you know, there is so much still to live for. There is so much joy and good things, and we've spoke about that a lot today. And I'm glad that actually we've not touched so much on the bad things, because I
We
think
can
we've
do a separate episode on that because I think
yeah,
it's important to balance it in case anybody else is feeling that
Ex-
stuff too. But
exactly. But I think that I'm glad that this has been dedicated to a lot of the positives that we found, because I don't think many people, like, it feels like a weird thing to say, oh, these are the positives and benefits that I've gained from my loved one passing away. Like, that, it feels foreign to some sense, but it's true. There is some things, and like I said earlier, I think if you search hard enough, there is a silver lining on some of the most dark and, you know, gloomy clouds. Like, there is always, and if you look hard enough you'll find it. And I think I put a post out a couple of weeks ago on my anniversary of my dad's death, and, you know, coincides with my 10-year anniversary, and it's given me a bit of a zest for life. Like, it's given me a bit more of a taste of, I don't want to dwell on sad things. I want to acknowledge them, I want to address them, but I want to choose to have a life where I search for positives, where I make my life something that I want it to be and something I want to be here for, specifically because, you know, mental illness runs in my family, right? So um I'm quite conscious of looking after my mental health, because I've had so many family members that have suffered with it, and there does, you know, there is some evidence to say that that can be passed down.
yeah, that's true.
So similar to Laura, where she's wanted to take care of her heart and her health from that perspective, for me, being in therapy, doing all of these things, proactively looking after my mental health and my brain the same way I am my physical. And this is a massive positive for me, this podcast. You know, if anything, that's one of the biggest positives we've taken away from grief, is being able to do this and support other people and talk to other people about their grief. I've never had so many people reach out to me as I have since we've started doing this.
Yeah, 'cause it's very isolating, and I think, like we said before, it's not that we're really not appreciative of the people that we have around us. We are. We're so grateful for those that
Okay,
love
Nella just
and
spent 10 minutes talking about
love and care for us. But I,
it.
like I said to Shan the other day, there was a lady that posted an anonymous message actually on Facebook just to say, like, she just had no idea how to cope.
Yeah.
And it was heartbreaking. And I reached out to her, and I hope she'll reach back out. But I just think it's so sad to know people are in that place, because you just don't know. People can be surrounded by people, but you can still feel like you're on your own. So just continue to step up and to be there for people throughout the grief, I guess, because it is such a continuous
Yeah.
thing. And yeah, you do change for the better in some respects. But let's be honest and frank in the respects as well of that there's a lot of unfortunate things that happen to how you feel and to how you deal with things when you first lose somebody. So
Yeah, and we will do an episode on that, because I think there is definitely some, you know, if you're not feeling particularly positive right now, especially if you're in those early days, hopefully this gives you a little bit of hope of maybe what's to
yeah,
come, because I didn't feel all these things and appreciative of all these things, sort of a
you never think they're going to happen. You never think
no.
there's going to be a positive side to losing a loved one, and there isn't to the event itself, obviously. But you, as a person, as a character, sort of your
Yeah, your
attitude to things,
outlook.
your outlook does change, and it has to for the better, in my opinion, because you can either hold on to the sadness or the anger, and then that channels into the way that you respond to things in a really negative way,
Yeah.
which isn't what how you want to live your life, and it's certainly not how your loved one would want you to. And I always think that, why would mum want you to be sad or angry at that today?
Mm.
And I know some people will say, you shouldn't be worrying about what your loved one would think. But I do think that, because I think it's
I think it
important
helps
to do
you.
that. It helps.
You
Yeah.
personally, I think it helps. I don't tend to do it very much. Not because I don't think my dad would care. He would, but I think for you, I say it to you all the time about your mum,
Yeah, you
because
do.
I know that you that will change your mindset, because you cared so much about what your mum felt and thought and felt about you when you were here, when she was here.
Yeah.
So that shouldn't go away because she's gone. Like, you need to be reminded of the fact that your mum's opinion meant a lot to you. So
Yeah,
consider
very
her
true.
opinion in even
I'd
now.
always go to her for advice. It's one of those things, isn't it? When you suddenly lose that person that you'd always go to, you have to try and think, well, what would they think? And also, I think that's a really nice way of keeping their memory alive,
I
because if
agree.
you're not thinking that way, then that side of who they were can't live on.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So yeah.
So anyway, guys, thank you for listening to this episode. It's great to have Laura back.
Thank you.
It's great to be sat on a sofa rather than a little armchair.
Yeah, it's very comfy, very cozy in
We
here.
can see each other better now as well because our mics are from this way. Whereas
Yeah, before
sometimes
we
we look at each other like,
all right over there. Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I've enjoyed this episode because I think it's really nice to reflect on some of the positive stuff, and I try to do a lot of that now, as I know you do, Laura, and just try and be appreciative of all the good things and be present. And
You only get one life, and unfortunately, it can be a short one sometimes. So that's why, we would like people to believe that there is joy after loss, and that hopefully, in some ways, the way that you are as a person, how you shape and define what that looks like, can be for the better. And of course, you can take that into the rest of your life and continue to live the life for your loved one as well. That's how I like to try and think of it. So,
but yeah, give us a follow on social media if you haven't already. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. I know some of you guys aren't because I can see the numbers. And I know that the numbers, our subscribers, is not as high as our watchers. So yeah, please subscribe, and the same on Spotify. Give us a follow on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. And yeah, and then obviously we do our reels on YouTube as well. So if you watch them, they're on there. And we wanted to do a segment in the next couple of weeks, and in fact I'm going to mention this on the next episode, maybe at the beginning, in case some of you have already logged off, but to talk about some of your loved ones that you've lost and your experiences, and almost do like a message in where you can tell us all about your experiences and we can read them out, and almost give your loved one a platform to be spoke about and sung from the the hilltops, or what's the saying, sung from the
yeah, that's
hilltops,
right.
mountains.
Yeah, the mountaintops, hilltops.
Listen,
one of the two.
One of the two.
It's fine.
But basically, to give them a platform, now they're no longer here, and especially if they did great things, or you want to speak about them in a really positive way, or maybe you just want to share your experience of grief with those around you. I think it's good for us to hear from some other people and share that.
We can do a Q&A as well if there's anything specifically that you wanted us to answer on that front too. Please let us know.
Yeah, especially because I know I've had a couple of people, and Laura's the same, where they've reached out specifically about our situations, suicide from my side. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people I know that have lost people to suicide, so I'm more than happy to answer some questions about that. But I think we could probably just diversify whatever the situation is. We're more than happy to answer any questions. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy our new setting. We're trying not to move again.
Also,
yeah, little Bolly in the back.
Check it out. She's here.
Little Bolly in the back.
Bolly. There will be daffodils in there hopefully soon, because my mum loved daffodils. Her favourite flowers were like sweet peas, and she also loves lilies, but she always used to have daffodils around sort of Easter time. So keep looking. There'll be new flowers in there.
But yeah, see you all soon.
Take care.